And we're up. Ooh, I'm liking the lighting tonight.
Yeah.
So it's just less.
Less.
It's more natural light, less
Less is more.
designy light.
Yeah.
Also interesting that like what I'm seeing versus what is on the thing.
Yeah.
Like the top of your noodle is cut off here, but in here it's perfectly framed. How'd you do that?
I don't know.
I don't know either, man. It looks great though.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
And
sharp looking fellas.
well, I mean, maybe. So how do I
I got
can I
something on
do
my
the
shirt
actual
right
thing?
here.
Sam Schmidt already in the live stream.
Sam Schmidt.
We literally just started.
I know. How do you?
We haven't even like the show hasn't even begun. How are we gonna open this one?
You're gonna say, and that's why.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's what I do. That's
that
what
is.
we do.
That's the thing.
Let's see. And that's why it should always be in the writer. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more inside glass in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
We broke a record on the writer situation this past week at our live band karaoke. We got like a bottle of champers that was definitely not on the writer.
Yeah, no, Veuve
But,
Clicquot, no less.
Yes, Veuve like love.
Hmm.
I learned that. It's a very nice bottle of champagne.
Yeah, good stuff.
And I was very excited, and I sent a picture to Amber, who was not participating. She was like, "You're bringing that home, right?" And I was like, "Oh crap, I guess
Well,
so."
now I am.
Yeah. Well, how's it going, Dan?
You know, it is pretty good. It is pretty good. We have ongoing work to get the first show of the 80s band up and several months yet to do it in. So I'm not feeling a ton of time pressure about that, but there's a fair amount of work to be done. I've also got all the marketing collateral to assemble. I think I have a final logo. And I have a trial version of a website at Bandzoogle that I don't like at all. I have to tear it down and do it all from scratch. And
I'm gonna look at mine.
yeah, I might. Yeah, all that's working great. I will say one thing, and I share this with you before we hit the record button.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an increasingly aged fellow,
Same.
as we all are, I suppose. And one thing that I've had chronically for a long, long time, and I've talked about it on the pod in the past. I couldn't remember the context of it, but you've reminded me that I did. Is some chronic pain I've had in my feet that make gigging hard. Not the gigging itself. While I have stage adrenaline, I feel like Superman. But the next morning is brutal, and I also can't do very many miles on my feet without it really hurting. It's a function of bone spurs and then a fun little nubble of extra bone at the back of my heel, which is called Haglund's deformity. If anyone wants to Google that and be grossed out, let it rip.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it's super great on both feet. And so I now have Achilles tendonitis, probably turned actually into tendinosis, which is what happens when tendonitis goes for a really long time. And so I had my first visit. Saw a podiatrist about it, kind of felt like there was something we could do about it. Had my first visit with a physical therapist this week, and a ton of stretches and some Voltaren gel and some other things we're doing about it. But he did say, look, you know, one of the approaches here is going to be to modulate your things that you do on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to really pick your things. And I said, look, I'm a musician. I stand and bop around and dance around and run around a stage for 3 hours, maybe couple 3 times a month on a good month. And he's like, yeah, you may need to think about a stool. And I don't like that at all. I just go on record saying I don't like that at all. I did buy a stool. Those of you watching us in the vertical mode can see it over my shoulder right there.
Yep.
Maybe horizontal mode too, slightly. And those of you just listening can't see it at all, but it's a stool, and it's bar height. You know, it's high enough that I don't sit down on it. I kind of lean back on it, so my height isn't dropped too much by it. And I certainly can see rehearsing on it. That will help my life a lot to have the regular, I rehearse way more than I gig at this moment in my life, and so taking those off my feet will be good. And then maybe I'll have it on stage or near stage or something that I can pull it out when I need it on gig day. But I really am having a hard time picturing that actually happening. So I don't know. I'd love to hear from anyone who gigs on a stool or sitting. Our friend Big Dumb Hick, Jeff Wall,
Yep.
sits to play. It's his position, and it works because he's like 9 feet tall standing up, so he sits down and
Sure.
is our height. Um, anyway, I'd love to hear thoughts about that. How people have made that work. What you've had to accommodate physically as your body has changed. Maybe be an interesting topic to get into sometime. I now have things to say.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned like just gig related situations. On Thursday, the day that we did the live band karaoke, which we'll do a post mortem on shortly, I broke a cardinal rule. I went to the gym and I did legs
Oh,
on a gig day,
yeah.
and throwing actual weight around, barbell squats and deadlifts, and I should not have done that. It was a
Mm,
bad idea,
yeah.
and I still don't feel right. My legs are still upset with me in a very serious way.
Yeah.
So uh, I I've learned my lesson. I shan't do that again.
Yeah. Got to be strategic about these things.
Yeah. And I was thinking through that gig itself. We didn't provide production. It was a pretty low impact as far as like load in and load out. It was just the performing, which of course can be pretty intense, as you were mentioning. But I can't even imagine how much worse it would have been if we were also, you know, carting in the PA and all that
For
jazz.
sure. Yeah.
Could have been real rough.
Yeah, definitely.
So, do we want to get into our gig recap, I
I am
guess?
dying to hear about it.
Okay. So, this was the second year of an event that we have done, and it's for the Georgia Commercial Real Estate Board, more or less.
Okay.
So, it's folks that do like commercial building. And one of the things that they tend to do when they have this event is that they will hold the event at one of the places that they have just finished.
Ah,
So, the year before, we were at a place called, I can't think of it, it's West Side something. It was basically like a an outdoor bar, restaurant, meeting place, music venue kind of thing, uh, and it had literally just opened. And this original event was supposed to go on a month ago, but the place that they wanted to do it at had not been completed because, of course, they're still in the process of building these things.
yep.
So they ended up moving the date and the venue to this other place, which they're calling Uptown Atlanta, which is actually it's technically kind of between Buckhead and Midtown. If you're in our area, for everybody else, none of this matters. But it was like it was a building revamp, and it was for the most part done. Our green room is actually in a part of the building that they have not completed yet. But when we rolled in, production was already set up. Really nice stage, big LED wall behind us. But we were in a very large glass atrium, basically.
Ah,
And when we started doing sound check, I sent a video to the Slack, and I was like, "Oh man, this is not going to sound great." Uh, but because it was very well attended, all of the meat bags who were standing in the room actually did a pretty solid job of eating up a lot of that
that's good.
ambient sound, and ended up being okay.
Yeah, good.
Uh, Band did great. We had a couple of wild card things pop up. The thing that really like chapped my ass was I was in charge of doing all the lyrics and making sure all the tracks and everything were all put together. And we went to go do a song that I had already made accommodations for, but we went to go load the lyrics, and the lyrics weren't in our software.
Mm.
And wouldn't you know it, the song that the lyrics were missing from was, of all things, "Ironic" by Alanis Morissette. And I was like, son of a bitch,
Yep.
that would be
It
the
is.
song that
It,
didn't make it.
it isn't it ironic?
So I'm scrambling and I'm apologetic to the singer. And it's this girl who's done it before with us. And she was like, "It's just like the record, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Right.
And she nailed it.
Yeah.
She didn't need our help.
No.
I went to all that stress for nothing. The thing that sucked though is that in the process of me trying to hunt down lyrics for her, I wasn't able to load my charts, and I was the one who kind of borked the beginning of the song because I couldn't get the I couldn't get the charts fired up quickly enough. So once again, ironic,
Yeah,
don't you think?
it is. It is. I'm thinking hard about, I mentioned, just speaking of charts, last week I talked about automating all of my MIDI changes and stuff. Um, there is a way in Band Helper to transmit like events, scrolls, and song changes and stuff to all other Band Helper devices on the stage. And I
Yep.
haven't looked into that, but I think I could get hands off for all of us. Um,
Yeah.
as the track rolls, I could just forward everyone through the chart. And um, I hadn't really contemplated how to get into that, but I think at next rehearsal we'll play with it some.
Yeah, there's we talk a lot about band helper because it's what we use, and that's what we were using for this gig this past week. It was a situation like where you can set up the chord charts and stuff in any other playback system. Able Set has the ability to do that kind of thing as well with lyrics, with chords, with all kinds of stuff,
Mhm.
and it it's super effective. It's great. You just have to be willing to eat the elephant, and
The
put the work
setup,
in.
the setup is a lot of work. We'll talk about that a little later, I think.
Yeah, and when we were going through the post-mortem with the band, Joey, our guitar player, was like, "Hey, uh, he was asking about the software that we use for lyrics is called ProPresenter. It's a software that my company makes." And he was asking about the automation thing, and I was like, full disclosure, yeah, you can do this in ProPresenter, but we could also do this in Band Helper. We could also do this in Ableton, and that may be better use of our time and resources than trying to make it work in that particular software. I think there's better ways of utilizing that kind of automation functionality
Mm.
that doesn't involve using that specific piece of software, even though, it would make my job more secure, I suppose. you know, but all's well that ends well.
Sure.
The other thing that was kind of rough about that situation is that it was an early start time. Like we started playing at 5. Food didn't show up as far as catering goes until literally like 10 minutes before.
Uh,
And so like their person was like, "All right, I just wanted to bring you guys out that it's ready for you guys to eat." And I was like, "We go on in 3 minutes." And she's like, "It's not 5 till 5 already, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it
in
is."
fact.
So we did end up doing 4 straight hours, no break.
Mm.
Just it wasn't ideal. I literally, as we were going on stage, I found this like tostada thing that was like tuna or whatever, and I like inhaled it. I was just like, get this into my body as fast as possible, just so I have something in my stomach for the next 4 hours to fuel myself. But when we got off stage, they had saved all of the catering, and it was like brisket, quesadillas, and deep fried pork. But like it was just the exactly the kind of trash that you want to eat the second you stop playing.
It's awesome.
And we just had like a freaking platter of it.
Love it.
It was fantastic. Got Rob Sharp and Mike Echo Oscar Whiskey in the live chat. Rob, of course, talking about strange electronics, talking about teleprompters and all that jazz, which we've also gotten into. Strange just happens to, their software tends to be a bit more expensive than the other solutions that we've mentioned, but they are kind of like the gold standard for that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
especially when Ableton's concerned.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. We had a blast. Got to play a bunch of songs we had never played before. Got to do some stuff that we hadn't done in a while. I had 2 kind of like nerve-wracking spots where I really needed to like crush the thing that I was doing. I was tasked with the main riff in Dead or Alive, Bon Jovi, and Mama I'm Coming Home, and they're not necessarily technical parts, but it is the song. Like it's the thing
Oh,
that
yeah.
makes the song the
No,
song.
yeah, you don't want to flub those.
Yeah. So I spent more time than I probably should have digging into making sure that those worked, and that paid off. Both of those songs went off without a hitch, and everything for the most part worked great. I ended up playing bass on a couple of tunes because again there were some curveballs that we hadn't anticipated, and bass player hadn't prepped for. So I was like, screw it, I can do it. So we just swapped spots, and
Nice.
no one was ever the wiser. We did end up setting up a keys rig because some of the stuff, there was just like one guitar part and there wasn't anything for us to do. So and at some points, one of us just stood behind the keys, whether we were playing anything or not.
Yeah.
It was just there. It was a good prop. It worked, and nobody was any the wiser.
That's good.
So that's pretty much it. Going through some housekeeping stuff. No reviews this week either. You want to hear us you want to get shouted on the show. It's an easy way to do that. Speaking of shouts, I did want to shout out John from Las Vegas. He signed up this week as a $10 annual member. So he paid the year up front and got access to all that jazz. And John was actually one of the guys that I ran into out at NAMM.
Oh.
He came in from Las Vegas because he was there to do certification on one of the line array systems. And he introduced me to a bunch of really great musicians. This guy named Gabriel, who was in this band. I don't know if you've seen this on the internet, of that guitar player who like can shred on guitar and on keyboards at the same time.
I haven't seen that. I need to find that.
Well, and his guitar, like the neck of his guitar is like is set up like a keyboard piano,
Huh.
like you can see like black and white keys.
Yeah.
Guy's an absolute monster. And his partner, I don't know where their status is relationally anyway. She was there. She's got a signature bass. And she's fantastic, and they were super nice people. And big shout out to John for introducing us and for joining the Patreon. So
Yeah.
if you want to get in on all of that jazz, hit us up. We'll do it. We'll talk through it. We'll share all the stuff we know.
Indeed.
All right. So this week we were kind of thinking about stuff to get into, stuff we wanted to talk about, and the big thing that kind of jumped out at all of us was Dan has done a live karaoke standing event for years at this point.
Solo acoustic. Well, acoustic karaoke, yeah.
Sure, but it's
not a band. Just me, live guitar, singers. Yeah, totally.
And we've got a fair amount of those gigs coming up, and so we felt it was a cool idea to do live band karaoke do's and don'ts for the band who might be looking to get into it. And just kind of best practices that we've figured out over the course of this whole thing. Now, objectively, live band karaoke is a really interesting proposition because it does require a little bit of setup on the band's end.
Yes.
You have to have a pretty wide swath of repertoire in order to do this properly. I would say, if you're just getting started, 50 songs is probably like the bare minimum that you could get away with. But realistically, you need to be like 100 or more to do this in a way that is sustainable.
Yeah. I was at the same time as I was doing karaoke shows, I was also doing trivia shows, and kind of in the same week I'd do one of each of them. And I was committed for a while to doing no repeats in my trivia shows because I had people coming back over and over again, and I didn't want to play the same stuff for them. So that really expanded my repertoire, and a lot of those things found their way onto my karaoke list, which is now about 530 songs. And there are certainly some that people could pull out and be like, "Wow, I haven't touched that one. We're going to need to just pass and pick something else." There are certainly some of those in there. But yeah, right. But there are also some. Well, we'll come back to that. You're right. Point is, if you've got a list that big, honestly, the top 40 are the ones that people request.
Sure.
So, yeah, you're not exposing yourself too much.
Well, and the one thing that you end up finding out is, especially when you get to a repertoire that wide, is like you just kind of fall into this thing where songs are just like data points.
Yeah.
And you don't really even need to quote unquote learn the song. I remember hearing this once. I know where the changes are.
Yeah.
I can look at a chart, kind of glance at it just at a cursory level, and just crank these songs out.
Yeah. 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 Including, if it's just me and a guitar and somebody singing, like often we get to the bridge and none of us know what's supposed to happen. Right. And so I'll just shout out, skip ahead. Let's just go to the next verse. We'll just do it. We'll just jump ahead. The stakes are really, really low when you don't have a whole band to coordinate or a track to sync with. I always say, in a lot of ways, that's easier for singers than traditional recorded karaoke, because if you miss your entrance, I'll just play through the intro again. Like
Right.
I
You
I
can,
gotcha. Just
yeah.
just stick with me. It's makes life a lot easier in some ways, and different and challenging in others.
But it is all it's a twofold thing because it is something that will 100% like tighten up a band
Mm,
and like really spread your kind of song roster
yes.
significantly. And it is a unique value prop for you and the venues in your area because not everybody can do it. And those that do have a creative advantage, competitive advantage where you can offer that as an option. We were talking about this last week that it's important to be able to come in with different products to
Hmm.
sell to potential clients, and this is one of them. And it's been very lucrative. Our live band karaoke gigs are the higher paying gigs.
Yes.
They do require a little bit more overhead, but they also demand a higher price tag.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in our experience, it's been worth the effort, and it benefits the regular standing groups because we have to work on tunes and learn stuff that widens our backlog. So
Right.
this week we added Flagpole Sitta, Harvey Danger, Love Shack, Jack and Diane, like songs that we are going to play in the future.
Exactly.
And it was just like it was kind of just a nice excuse to sit there and like dig into these songs that have been kind of on the back burner forever, but now we had a reason to do them, and now they're in there, so we can just start pulling them out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many things that I do in every acoustic show now started as somebody wanted to do it in karaoke. Fathers and Sons, Cat Stevens, right? Like stuff like that. Just
Mm.
classic acoustic sort of vernacular stuff that is not, you don't hear it around that much anymore, but it's great. And when you pull it out, people are like amazed. I would never have thought of that one.
Yeah.
I'm a Wild World guy. I don't know much. I'm not deep on Cat Stevens, but that's a great tune, and yeah, being able
Yep.
to pull it out was fantastic. And it's one of many that came as karaoke requests.
Awesome.
Now, listen, in terms of the systems you need to stand up, there's some different
Hmm.
stuff that you need to provide for
Hmm.
karaoke to work. One is the people need to see your set list,
Yep.
right? I think no, you mostly take requests before the show, right? You come in prepared.
So let's back up first.
All right,
So we are starting in the do category,
good.
and the first do that we thought we should mention is that you need to invest in your systems.
Yeah,
So that is the thing that we're talking about right now. Now, what you were referring to is this gig that just happened.
yeah.
This is a really unique situation because it is technically live band karaoke, but in reality, it is more like a singing competition.
Uh,
So what ends up happening is that people sign up before the event starts, and they know that they're going to do at least one round of songs. And then if they make the second round, there'll be a second tier.
okay.
So what we prepped for was a potential 2 round deal with these people, but because we were there contracted for a specific amount of time, we played some of our stuff just as a band, and then we also opened the floor up to just walk-ins who wanted to just do karaoke. So there was a bit of it that was we were able to prep ahead of time. There was some stuff that we just had to be ready to do on the fly, and then you know the stuff in between that we just used to fill time.
Yeah. And so in terms of the walk-ins, how did you manage those requests? How did you manage them knowing what you could play?
Yep. So here are the things that we use in order to do this. Now, Dan's got an automated system. It's like app based and that kind of thing.
Yep.
We are, at least in this particular setup, very analog. So it involves printing out song lists, stapling them together, kind of spreading them out in the area, as well as paper sign up sheets. So what happens is if you want to participate, you go over to a station, which is side stage, and we have a lyrics op. So there's somebody there who is triggering the lyrics as they progress, and they are also managing the sign-ins and all of that
Good.
jazz.
That's good.
You could technically split that up again across two people, but it just kind of depends on the setup.
Right.
We have done other corporate events where there was dedicated people for each of those. So the person that was doing the sign up was also kind of the MC for the night. They're the ones going like, all right, and here comes Jeff singing some Bon Jovi, while somebody else was operating the lyrics for the songs themselves. And the process that we use as far as like knowing what's coming up and how the people on stage are able to read the lyrics and such, we're using Pro Presenter to do that. Now it's a software specifically for live lyrics, and it's got a lot of really neat features. It's a little bit pricey, but because I work for the company, I have a free copy of it, so I'm going to use it.
There you go.
And the thing that I like about it specifically is that it gives us options to kind of elevate the experience. So we can add custom branding to the lyric pages. We can put logos up in between songs. Like we can do a lot
Nice.
with
Nice.
the product. So it feels high end. It feels white glove. It feels premium. And that was kind of the thing. So like when we went in there, we looked at the setup. We looked at the banners and all the promo material, and it was like, okay, let's use this particular color background because it jives with everything else that's going around. And it's, again, it's just a little tiny detail, but makes a big difference for the person as far as experiencing it for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
that
it's
kind of stuff
probably,
matters.
it's the kind
in little
of thing
ways.
that they might not notice, but they certainly would notice if you didn't do it. If
Right.
things didn't match, it would be jarring. Things matching are smooth enough that it doesn't interrupt the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that we do just for the musicians on stage is at the beginning of every song, the first slide is the name of the song.
Helpful.
So it's not the first line of the lyrics, it's just the song. So that means that the second that the last verse is sung on the song before, it goes right up on to that monitor, which is on stage facing us. And so we know exactly where we're going, and that gives us time to kind of prep for things. So, in certain circumstances, we gotta, grab a capo, we gotta adjust our tuning, we gotta do something that gives us the time of the person going off the stage from the previous song and coming up for the next one, for us to kind of reset, prep, and make sure that when they're ready, we're ready.
It's good. It's good. And you're running tracks for all this too, right?
For the most part, depending on the songs,
Okay.
yeah, some of them have tracks, some of them don't. We typically run clicks for everything, unless it is that kind of tune where it just kind of meanders.
Yeah.
So like Friends in Low Places, or some of the older stuff where it just kind of, you can speed up and slow down, stop and start, and that kind of thing. We don't really worry about that.
Sure.
But for the most part, we're going to do that. One, because it fills it out. It's also more familiar for the person singing
Yes.
to hear the things that they recognize from the recording.
Yes.
And so I don't, a lot of people feel a certain way about using tracks or instrumentation that's not on stage. But the fact of the matter is that, if we're doing Bon Jovi back to back with Carrie Underwood, we're not going to hire a fiddle player and a steel player and, a dobro player. Like, there's just it's not practical to do those kinds of things.
And I think
tracks are going to help you there.
I think to your point though, you've also got civilian singers to help get through this thing, and them hearing the song the way they expect to hear it makes a huge difference.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, investing in systems, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
on
on
my side, my show is a lot lighter weight than that. It's just a guy and a guitar. And before COVID, I did have binders, 3 little black binders that I kept up to date with my latest song list, and which was a pain in the butt to do, but I did it. And I paper sign up with some pens sitting around. And then while we were all locked down, I sort of thought, even when we come out of this, I don't really want people running their grubby fingers through my junk here, so let me just put all that away, and we'll replace it with, and I built a web app that's mobile first, that people use to sign up, and the signups come to me, and I can manage the process of them and the schedule. I can push them around in order, and I can mark them as done and all that kind of stuff. They can tip me on it. They can actually tip to get to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's honestly that's the coolest feature
It's
of
a
that whole setup.
it is pretty killer. Yeah, yeah. Now the thing that I don't have handled in a very sophisticated way, it works, but it's not sophisticated, is lyrics. So when
Yep.
you look at the queue page, you see you don't see names or songs for anyone but yourself. But on the ones that are you, like, hey, here's me. I'm 3 songs from now. There's a link that just does a search on Genius for the
Yeah.
song title and takes you to what might be the lyrics page, maybe not. So people come up and do it with their phone in their face,
Yep.
and that's it works. It works. It's not elegant, and there are times when my chart doesn't match what Genius has, and so we get out of sync there, and people feel like they're lost. But really, it's me that's lost probably because
Yeah.
whatever I'm playing from Ultimate Guitar mostly, it may have missed a piece or something. Um, I certainly have thought about when it was old school, when it was on paper. I had my band helper view on a stand off of my mic, and people would stand
Hmm.
right next to me and kind of share it, and I'd be able to like point at the lyrics. Here's where we are, right? Um, and as I paged through that with my foot Bluetooth turner, right? The
Yep.
lyrics moved along, and that was kind of how people expected it. I did have some people like bellyache that I didn't have a bouncing ball for them. Yep, that's it. I have an AirTurn BT4, I think, something. Um, and then part of the thing is part of the deal with the show is you just got to help them along some. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
talk more about that on a later bullet point, but how you get around not having the lyrics turn colors as time goes by is
Hmm.
that you're singing with them. You're
Yep.
shoving them through the song, you know. So that's part of the process for me too.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we end up doing is like counting people in. So like we know because we have, if we're doing tracks, we have the cues,
Yep.
so we know when stuff is coming. So yeah, you count them in, you do that kind of thing. Uh, but ultimately, you need to think through whatever that system is, and you need to make sure that you are as confident with those systems as you possibly can be. The easiest thing to do would be to, if you're playing with tracks, to like record a video version of that where the track move, where the lyrics move along with
Yep.
the track itself. I mean, karaoke version does actually sell like the bouncy ball style videos that
Yes.
you can use in conjunction. Now, of course, the issue is that their arrangements aren't always what you're looking for. Like we did "I'm Every Woman" by Whitney Houston, and the original version of it that's on the soundtrack has this like 90-second, almost 2-minute introduction before it gets to the thing that like you remember hearing on the radio,
Right.
and so all that had to go,
Yeah.
and a lot of manual cutting, and I was going in and adding the cues and all that stuff. So you do have to be willing to put that stuff together and make sure that it's as seamless as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So invest in systems. Whatever it is you're doing, learn it, set it up, do it to the best of your ability, be confident in it. End of list. Next, do be fearless. And this is one that I came up with. And to me, the ethos of live band karaoke is that it's chaos. You don't know what you're going to get. It's either going to be the biggest disaster you have ever seen or the greatest thing you've ever seen, and nobody knows
Right.
what it's going to be until it starts happening.
Right. I've told you the story about the first band I ever tried this with. So it was we
I think
had
so,
we had a,
probably.
we had a thing we were calling 5 minute rock star, and so
Hmm.
it was you drop your request into with your name and contact information for a mailing list into a fishbowl, and we'd pull out I think 2 per set to have people come up and do
Okay.
it with us. And um, the first one that came up was a girl who came up and did Brown Eyed Girl, and had none of it. She had nothing. She didn't have the fa la 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 la's. She had nothing. Couldn't like we were goosing her along the whole way. Like
Yeah.
she had nothing. And then she got done and she turned to me and said, "Can I do one more?" Like, no, you're done. Get off. And then the second
You
guy,
barely got
yeah,
through that.
she didn't do that. Yeah, second guy who got up was doing the weight and tore it up. He was incredible. And
Hmm.
later, I was talking to the bartender. He said, "Yeah, that guy was a series finalist in Star Search with Ed McMahon in the '80s. Like a decade or two later, he would have been an American Idol, right? But
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing back then. But he's the real deal, and now he does karaoke in this bar every time we do it. So, yes, it was a real story of two extremes. You never know what you're going to get, and Yeah, sometimes you love it and sometimes you get through it.
Yep. But it gives you the ability to go in directions you wouldn't normally go and do
Yes.
things outside of your comfort level. And to me, the thing that I love about this particular format is the spontaneous stuff that happens that you weren't expecting, you weren't sure was going to work,
Yep.
and maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But the discovery is the to me the joy in it.
Yes.
So, in our situation, we had somebody asked to do "Hit Me Baby One More Time" wasn't on the list, wasn't something that we had prepped, uh, and I looked at our bassist Jeff, who's still pretty new, and I was like, "Do you have this?" And he's like, "No," and so I was just like, "Well, hand it to me," and so I played bass on that one, got the slap part figured out, like and we were able to pull it off. Nobody was any the wiser, and I got to do a thing that I really enjoy doing. I love playing bass. It's not something I get to do very often. Uh, and it was just kind of a willingness to be like, all right, we're not 100% on this, but I bet you we're 80 something percent
Yeah.
there. And we could probably figure the rest of it out as we go.
Yep.
And that's, to me, that's the magic of the whole thing. The other thing that happened that I was I was really proud of is we did I'm Every Woman. We didn't get a chance to rehearse it before the show. And the lady who did that song had performed at the previous event last year. And I just knew she was going to crush because she's just incredible.
Mm.
She did Walking on Sunshine last year. And like, it was one of the, like, it was the most fun I've ever had playing that song ever. Cause she just like, her energy was just like incredible. And if you remember I'm Every Woman, the Whitney Houston version, there's like this really crazy, like fifth harmony above what she's singing
Yeah.
in the second verse. It's of confusion in your mind, but it's like up there. And I hadn't practiced it, hadn't prepped it, but I just like literally full voice, like 3 feet away from the mic, just like sent it.
Yeah.
And she looked over, and then all the other guys in the band looked over. They're like, "Did that just happen?" Like, it was the proudest musical moment I've had in
It's great.
ages.
It's great.
Where it was just like, here goes nothing, and it like I nailed it, and it was awesome.
That's great.
So that's the kind of stuff that I really dig. It's the idea that we're gonna try something, and it's going to go however it's gonna go, and you take the thing that you learned from it, and maybe you don't do it again, but like maybe it just takes you in a direction you hadn't like prepared for,
Yeah.
and it's amazing.
Yeah. Just by introducing this random element on stage, it just, it gets you off the rails of your normal gig. It gets you loose and creative and thinking in ways you don't think. I completely agree.
So be fearless.
Be fearless.
Go into it. The next thing that you need to do is to make sure that you, as the musician, are going out of your way to play to the strengths of the person who is singing.
Yeah. Look, your job is to
Whatever
make
that
them.
means.
Your job is to make them great.
100%. And that doesn't always necessarily mean that it's about you.
Right.
If anything, it's actually not
No,
about
it's
you at all.
not about you in the slightest.
And even like the story that I was telling you before, where I hit that harmony, it was there, and it was impactful because it backed her up
Right.
in a way that was like really special, and it didn't pull focus from her. It just made her performance that much better, and that's ultimately what we're there to do.
Yeah.
So even if your job is to sit there and play the guitar solo to a particular song exactly the way that it sounds on the record, you're doing that as a service to the performer. And it's not about you. It's not about like your execution as much as it is about doing the thing that makes the singer feel as comfortable as possible, as familiar as possible with what they're used to doing.
Yeah. And
or what they're used to hearing.
You could say that even in a normal gig, that solo isn't about you either. It's really in service of the song, right? But in this case, the song's there in service of this guest. And
Yes.
That's really ultimately who you're there to make shine.
Yeah. And so that means helping singers count them in.
Yeah.
You know, if they miss something, they miss a cue, sing to kind of get them back on track,
Right.
but only in passing. Don't
Right.
do it.
Right.
Don't sing over
Don't
them.
take over for
But
them. Yeah.
no, your job is to be the guide on that journey.
Yep.
I've talked about this book 1,000 times probably, but there's this guy Donald Miller. He's a marketing savant, and he's got this whole story brand kind of platform,
Right.
uh, as far as like marketing, and like the number one component of his methodology is that your job as the whatever is to not be the hero of the story, but to be the guide that makes the customer the hero of the story.
Right.
So your job is to be the Miyagi to their
Mm.
Daniel-san, I suppose.
There you go.
So be in service of the song, be in service of the vocalist, be in service of the customer, because ultimately that's what you're there to do. Play to their strengths, not yours. Okay, so those are the 3 do's. Let's go to don'ts.
Don'ts.
And there's really only 2 of those because the third one is a total throwaway, but I couldn't resist.
No, it's we can turn it into
we'll
something.
get-
I have faith.
we'll get there.
I have faith.
We'll get there. All right, so why don't you take this one?
So the first don't is don't gatekeep. And what I mean by that is quality of performance is not yours to judge at these things. Believe me,
Mhm.
the guests will be judging themselves plenty without your help.
Yeah.
But you know what happens when somebody stands up and delivers like a really amazing performance is it actually is suppressive to the people who want to go next. There are people that, you hear, I could never follow that. Or, I'll just sit back and I'm just here to watch. There are a lot of people who get pushed back from trying when the quality is consistently top, right?
Yeah.
It's got to look like amateurs. It's got to be amateurs, palpably got to be amateurs for it to really, really work in a room. I have a regular, and he does karaoke with a lot of different venues. He's like a karaoke guy.
Yeah.
And he's not what you'd call good.
Yep.
I love him with all my heart. He's loud. I actually had to get, I'm now using my Phoenix wireless for it, which has a volume on the input on the receiver. Yeah, that's the one. So I can turn him down a little bit when he gets up because he's
There you
just
go.
really high volume, but not necessarily high pitch accuracy. And he'll start off pitch and stay off pitch for the whole song if I let him. But he sells it, man. Nobody sells a song like this guy.
Oh yeah.
No professional singer sells a song like this guy. He's so into it and so over the top with it. And so it's like, you can't help love him, even though like, all right, well, the performance is a little questionable, but like, he's so into it and he just draws you into it so much. I proposed to him that My Way by Frank Sinatra would be a great one for him. And he now closes every show that I've done with him with My Way. And he's big with it, like huge. Does the full like Frankie, thing at the end of it. And it's super fun. So, those kinds of moments, that kind of the relaxation that happens in a room when you see somebody up there just sounding like an amateur and loving it. That's really important to the vibe of a karaoke night. So don't gatekeep, don't judge. Everybody did great. High five every single person or whatever it is, however you celebrate. If something comes up that's really surprising, I had a 12-year-old girl come up and do Hallelujah, and it was just spectacular. Like, you can note standout stuff like that, especially with kids. But don't like, all right, moving on. Whatever way you have to like undercut a celebration if the performance wasn't where you thought it ought to be, that's a don't. Don't do that.
Yeah. So when you were talking through that, I remember the first time I went to karaoke as like a person.
Yeah.
Some friends of mine from college, there was literally a Holiday Inn by the highway that did karaoke, I think on Wednesday or Thursday nights. And we went with my buddy and then his 2 roommates who were in a band together. And the guy who played drums, his name is Jesse. And he signed up. He's the first one who of that group that went up there. And he did Rebel Yell Billy Idol.
Sure.
And when I say he put his whole ass into that performance, I'm talking the like 2 hands on the microphone on his knees, just like screaming that chorus as hard as he could. It is still one of those things that has stuck with me. It's been 20 years since that happened. It is one of the most impactful things that I've ever seen. And it totally kind of like summed up, oh, this is what karaoke is supposed to be.
Right.
Because that room, again, we were right outside of Nashville. Karaoke at that particular place was for never was's or has-beens to kind of like, you know, exert their little circle of power or influence. And to watch somebody go in there and just frankly take the piss out of the whole thing was one of the most refreshing and hilarious and incredible things I've ever seen.
It's great.
So that's what it's about. You know, awesome is awesome. Good is subjective.
Yeah, I like that.
On that note,
yeah,
the next thing that you should not do is be a snob.
Yep.
And that's got more to do. This is very much the musician side of this.
Yep.
And it's not about what we were talking about before, like, you know, arbiters of good or whatever. This is more about the customer experience of the whole operation.
Yeah. Look, they're going to want to do Sweet Caroline. They're going to want that. So suck it up.
Yep.
Do it. Do it.
Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah. Don't not do it. Do those.
Yep.
Yep.
So don't say, oh, we're not going to play this. Like, if you are considering doing this kind of gig and there's any conversation about, oh, we're not doing that, you've already lost.
There's zero room to be too cool for a song in this business. Zero room. You know, you got to be completely willing to do, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And if it's unless it's like a very specific lane, like, you know, you're going to do pop punk emo karaoke. Okay, yeah, you're not going to necessarily do Sweet Caroline. And if you do, you're going to find some like
you'll rock. Yeah,
version of Sweet Caroline that, you know, some punk band did back in the mid 90s,
right,
that they put on like the backside of a 7-inch or whatever. You know, you're still going to find ways of doing it, but the point is to do it for the widest swath of people.
Yep.
And this is something that isn't just karaoke specific. Like this, you should be doing this for whatever project you're trying to do.
That's right.
You know, specifically talking about the whole pop punk thing is when we started talking about songs we wanted to do, Keenan, who's one of the guitar players, he and I are very kind of like, our sensibilities are very similar as far as like the music that we like. And he started listing off all these songs that he loved that he thought we should do. And it's like the 5th song off of their 3rd EP that wasn't used as a single. And like, yeah, it's great. And it is a song that I love, but it's like, it's not going to make the list.
Right.
And if it does make the list, it's going to make the list like 6 months down the line when, you know, you've set up some sort of like standing event where you've got repeat customers and you've got to kind of cater to that kind of clientele.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, you're middle of the road, right down the like.
Yeah, and something like that,
curveballs.
some oddball like that, you're going to Shaka Khan it, right? You're going to give it 2 or 3 nights, and if it doesn't perform, it's out.
I think you mean Wayne Chung it.
I do mean Wang Chung it. I mean Wang Chung it. I don't mean Shaka Khan it.
Shaka Khan. It's because I've said I'm every woman like 1,000 times.
I guess. I now have that in my head.
Yeah. So don't be precious. Play the stuff that everybody wants to hear. Learn the stuff that everybody wants to sing. Don't be a jerk about that kind of stuff. It serves no one, and frankly just makes the likelihood of you being successful at this particular thing impossible.
Yep.
So don't do it.
Now, speaking of things that everyone wants to sing, we have one final don't.
This is what happens when Dan and I are brainstorming day of the episode,
and we feel a need for symmetry. We had 3 do's.
Yes.
We feel like we need 3 don'ts. So the final 100%. Don't is don't
stop believing.
Yeah. Although it actually raises a point, because there are songs that people are going to want to do karaoke that you and I know aren't a one person singing it. It's a whole room singing it. When Don't Stop Believing happens, the whole room stops and sings, right?
Yep.
What's Up, Four Non Blondes.
Yep.
So a bunch of others we could name, right? So that's an awesome moment when you've got a karaoke singer, a karaoke guest leading a whole room that's yelling back at them. It's a good moment. It's a good moment.
Absolutely. We had a bunch of those moments at this event, and it was so much fun. The funny thing is that it was a competition, but it was very much like political in the way that it was, because these two guys came up and did Uptown Funk, and I sent a video of that
Yeah, it's
to
good.
the group, and they had the place just rocking. Everybody was up front. They were dancing like nobody even touched them as far as caliber of performance, like engagement. They were the most fun. It wasn't even close. They did not win. They didn't even make the second round,
Huh.
which is interesting. But it was because it was all a vote based on the people in the room, and people who had done this before kind of knew how to, work the rules and
There's
the system.
politicking going on. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Wow.
So those guys ended up winning like audience choice. They got they won the miscongeniality
All right. That's good.
component of it.
That's good.
Which
They
is well
just need
deserved.
to,
Like
they need to up their electioneering game for next year.
yes, yeah. They weren't willing to to grease the palms of the right kind of people, even though they crushed.
Yeah. And that song, Electioneering by Radiohead, probably too deep a cut.
Yep,
Yeah.
I would agree. So, do invest in systems. Do be fearless. Do play to the strengths of the people performing. Don't gatekeep. Don't be a snob. Don't stop believing, baby.
There you go.
And that's it. If you can think of any other things that we didn't talk about that would make a live band karaoke gig a success, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If this is not a thing that you have ever considered before, think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a really cool offering. And as far as, a unique value proposition, there's so many upsides to it.
Listen, as a solo acoustic guy, bars hire karaoke repeating. They hire one person to handle their Thursday karaoke, and so that's how. It's one of the ways you become a weekly regular instead of being on the 6 to 9 week cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Rob in the live stream was saying he's been thinking about doing this with his school group. They were the class that we did the lecture with.
Right.
If you remember?
Yep.
Which was so much fun. And talking about whether it's worth scaling down because they don't have the experience. And I think that's actually a really good exercise, because if the goal is to try something that you can then build upon, do start small. Start with a smaller list. Start with 30 songs. Start with 20 songs. Start with 50 songs. And maybe just do it for an hour or so, or 2 hours. Because the other thing that you need to kind of take into account is the format of karaoke actually doesn't lend itself to a very long set because the turnover is so high.
Yeah.
So you're going to do a 2 or 3 minute song, and it's going to take 90 seconds to 2 minutes to reset to get the next person up on stage ready to go. So a live band karaoke set over the course of 2 hours, maybe 20 songs, maybe.
Yeah,
it's probably closer to 15.
And there'll be zero flow.
No, it'll be a hot mess the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yep.
Totally fine. So yeah, start slow, start low, and just build over. It's just like anything else. Like if you've got a standing gig, let's say you set something up weekly, you start with 30 songs, and then you add 5 more.
Yeah.
And then the next week you add 5 more, and the next thing you know, you're 100 songs deep, and you're off to the races.
Right.
So
suddenly you look up and you have 530 on your list.
And it just happens. Like, you don't even have to. Oh, Rob's wanting to get us back on the lecture circuit this fall. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Game to do so. But like we said, if you have any questions, let us know. Hit us up. Thanks for all of the folks for participating in the live chat this evening. And we're going to keep cranking these out. If you'd like to support the show, you can do anything that Mike's about to tell you, but we'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of June 28th, 2024. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in on the live stream. Really appreciate it. The comments have been amazing, and we appreciate the support. We'll see you guys